She stood in the corner office of the tallest building in the city, her name etched in gold on the door. From here, she could see the streets where she once slept, cold and hungry, dreaming of a life that seemed impossible. No one could imagine that the woman now commanding boardrooms had once begged for scraps just to survive. But her journey from homelessness to CEO wasn't just a story of success, it was a battle against a world that constantly tried to push her down. The winter wind cut through Kara's thin jacket as she clutched her backpack tightly, her only remaining possession. The eviction notice had come just days earlier, and with no family to turn to and no savings to fall back on, she now found herself on the unforgiving streets. Her stomach growled as she walked aimlessly, passing storefronts that were aglow with holiday cheer, a cruel reminder of the warmth and stability she had lost. Kara found refuge that night in a small, dimly lit bus station. Sitting in the corner, she watched people come and go, each one with a purpose, a destination. Her destination, however, was nowhere. Tears threatened to spill as she pulled out a crumpled notebook, one of the few things she had saved during her eviction. Inside were pages filled with sketches and ideas, her dream business plan, the one she had started working on during her final year of college before life took a turn for the worse. She stared at the words on the page, willing herself to believe they still mattered. But in that moment, surrounded by strangers and silence, it was hard to feel anything but despair. The following morning, Kara woke up stiff and cold, the station's harsh fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. She wandered the streets until she found a soup kitchen. The line was long, filled with faces just as weary and weathered as hers. As she waited, her mind replayed the events that had led her here, losing her job, falling behind on rent, watching her carefully built life crumble in a matter of months. When she finally reached the front of the line, the volunteer serving food paused, giving her an empathetic smile. "Rough time?" the woman asked softly. Kara nodded, unable to muster words. "Hang in there," the woman said, sliding the tray of food toward her. "You're stronger than you think." Kara didn't believe her, not yet. But as she sat down and took her first bite of warm food in days, a small ember of resolve began to flicker inside her. She couldn't stay like this forever. She wouldn't. That night, Kara found herself at a community shelter. It was crowded, noisy, and far from comfortable, but it was safer than the streets. She lay awake on a thin cot, staring at the ceiling, replaying the volunteer's words in her mind. "You're stronger than you think." Somewhere deep inside, Kara felt a spark of defiance. She wasn't ready to give up, not yet. The shelter wasn't home, but it was a start. Kara spent her days wandering the city in search of jobs and resources, her backpack her only constant companion. Every rejection weighed on her, but her resolve stayed strong. On a rainy afternoon, as she sifted through flyers on a bulletin board at the library, one stood out: free community college program, limited spots. Her heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a job, but it was an opportunity. The next morning, Kara arrived at the community college early, clutching the flyer as if it were her lifeline. The admissions counselor, an older woman named Mrs. Daniels, greeted her warmly but looked skeptical when Kara explained her situation. "You'll need to show commitment," Mrs. Daniels said, adjusting her glasses. "This isn't just a handout, it's a chance to change your life. Are you ready for that?" Kara nodded with all the determination she could muster. Over the next few months, Kara threw herself into her studies. Balancing classes with odd jobs she picked up along the way wasn't easy, but she was determined not to fail. She spent countless late nights at the library, poring over business textbooks and scribbling notes in her battered notebook. Her professors began to notice her drive, and one in particular, Mr. Carter, took her under his wing. "You've got something special," he told her one evening after class. "But you need to believe it yourself. Confidence is half the battle in this world." Kara struggled with that advice. How could she be confident when she was still sleeping in a shelter, when her clothes were worn, and her future uncertain? But Mr. Carter's words stayed with her, pushing her forward even on the hardest days. One evening, as she was heading back to the shelter, she noticed a group gathered around a man speaking passionately in the park. Curious, Kara stopped to listen. The man was talking about his own journey from homelessness to success, describing how he had built a non-profit to help others in need. "In this world," he said, "you can either let your circumstances define you, or you can fight to define yourself." His words struck a chord deep within Kara. That night, as she sat on her cot, she opened her notebook and began rewriting her business plan with fresh energy. It wasn't just a dream anymore, it was a goal, a promise to herself that she wouldn't let her past dictate her future. Kara's hard work paid off when she graduated at the top of her class. On graduation day, as she walked across the stage to receive her certificate, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. It wasn't the end of her journey, but it was a step forward, and for Kara, that was more than enough. Graduating from community college was a milestone, but Kara knew it was just the beginning. She needed a job, and not just any job, something that could inch her closer to her dream of starting her own business. Armed with her certificate, a modest but polished second-hand blazer, and a lot of determination, she began applying to corporate positions in the city. Weeks turned into months, and the rejections piled up. "We're looking for someone with more experience," one email read. "You're not the right fit," said another. Each rejection felt like a blow, but Kara refused to give up. She spent her evenings refining her resume, practicing interview questions, and researching companies. Finally, an opportunity came. A medium-sized marketing firm called her in for an entry-level administrative assistant position. During the interview, Kara felt the skeptical eyes of the hiring manager, a middle-aged man named Mr. Bradley, assessing her every word. "You've got a good story," he said, leaning back in his chair. "But can you handle the pace of this environment? Corporate life isn't easy." "I've been through worse," Kara replied confidently, her voice steady. Something in her tone must have struck a chord because, 2 days later, she got the call. She had the job. Kara's first day was overwhelming. The office was a whirlwind of activity, phones ringing, meetings running back to back, and coworkers bustling past her desk without a second glance. She quickly realized she was one of the few black employees in the entire company. And the only woman of color on her floor. Her supervisor, a young woman named Amanda, was polite but distant. Kara noticed how Amanda's instructions often came with a subtle undertone, as if she expected Kara to struggle. "Make sure you proofread everything twice," Amanda would say. "It's easy to make mistakes when you're new." At first, Kara shrugged it off, focusing on her work and doing her best to meet deadlines. But the microaggressions grew harder to ignore. Comments about her appearance: "You look so bold in that outfit," or her background, "It must have been tough for you, coming from where you did," began to chip away at her resolve. One day, Kara overheard 2 coworkers chatting by the coffee machine. "She's trying too hard," one said, glancing in her direction. "Probably thinks she's going to climb the ladder here," the other replied with a smirk. Kara felt the sting of their words but didn't let it show. Instead, she worked even harder, often staying late to double-check her tasks and prove her worth. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. A few months in, Kara caught the attention of Mr. Donovan, a senior manager who admired her attention to detail and problem-solving skills. "You've got potential," he told her one afternoon. "But you're wasting it in this role. Have you ever thought about working in project management?" The idea lit a fire in Kara. With Mr. Donovan's mentorship, she began shadowing him on projects, learning the ins and outs of managing teams and budgets. But her success brought new challenges. Amanda, her supervisor, became increasingly critical, nitpicking Kara's work and questioning her decisions. "You're overstepping," she snapped one day after Kara suggested a more efficient way to handle a report. Kara wanted to fight back, but she knew she had to pick her battles. Instead, she focused on her long-term goals, telling herself that every obstacle was just another step on the ladder. One late night, as Kara was finishing up a presentation, Mr. Donovan approached her desk. "You remind me of myself when I started out," he said. "You're sharp, driven, and you don't let anyone stop you. Keep that up, and you'll go far." Kara smiled, feeling a glimmer of hope amidst the challenges. She wasn't just surviving in the corporate world, she was learning how to thrive. Kara's growth in the corporate world was undeniable. Under Mr. Donovan's mentorship, she had become a valuable asset, tackling complex projects and earning the respect of key team members. But despite her progress, Kara couldn't shake the feeling that she was merely surviving, not thriving. Her dream of owning her own business was still alive, but fear and uncertainty held her back. One evening, as she sat at her desk finishing up another report, Mr. Donovan stopped by. "You've done a fantastic job here," he said. "But I've noticed something, you're always looking. Looking beyond this place. You have bigger plans, don't you?" Kara hesitated, unsure if she should admit her ambitions. "I do," she finally said, her voice quiet but firm. "I want to start my own consulting firm someday. Help small businesses grow, especially in underserved communities." Mr. Donovan smiled. "Then what are you waiting for?" Kara blinked. "It's not that simple. I don't have the resources, or the safety net." "No one ever does," he replied. "But the longer you wait, the harder it gets. You've got the skills and the drive. Trust yourself." That conversation stayed with Kara. Over the next few weeks, she began to take small steps toward her dream. She attended networking events, saved every penny she could, and spent her weekends refining her business plan. It wasn't easy balancing her day job with her side hustle, but every step forward gave her a sense of purpose. Her breakthrough came when she pitched her business idea at a local entrepreneur showcase. Kara was one of the only women, and the only black participant, in the room. The panel of judges looked skeptical as she walked on stage, her nerves threatening to overwhelm her, but as soon as she began speaking, Kara's passion took over. She outlined her vision with clarity and conviction, emphasizing the impact her consulting firm could have on struggling businesses. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Then came the applause. After the event, Kara was approached by several investors who saw potential in her idea. One of them, a prominent venture capitalist named Evelyn Moore, took a particular interest. "You remind me of myself when I started out," Evelyn said. "I'd like to help you get this off the ground." With Evelyn's mentorship and financial backing, Kara finally had the resources to launch her business. She quit her job at the marketing firm, a decision that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The early days of her business were a whirlwind. Kara faced challenges she had never anticipated, difficult clients, financial setbacks, and moments of self-doubt. But every obstacle reminded her of how far she had come. She poured her heart into her work, helping small business owners achieve their goals and watching their success stories unfold. Her firm gained traction, and soon, she was making a name for herself in the local business community. Kara's story became an inspiration, proof that resilience and determination could overcome even the toughest odds. One evening, as Kara stood in her small but thriving office, she looked out at the city skyline and reflected on her journey. From sleeping in a shelter to running her own business, she had defied the odds and reclaimed her life. But her story wasn't just about her, it was about the people she had helped along the way and the lives she would continue to impact. Kara's consulting firm, Empower Growth Solutions, was more than a business, it was a mission. She had built it with a clear purpose, to uplift underserved communities, particularly minority-owned businesses that struggled to access resources and guidance. As her reputation grew, so did her opportunities. Kara began receiving invitations to speak at conferences and community events, sharing her journey from homelessness to success. Each time she stepped on stage, she felt the same mix of nerves and determination she had felt at that first entrepreneur showcase. But this time, her story wasn't just hers, it belonged to the people she aimed to inspire. One day, Kara visited the same shelter where she had once sought refuge. The staff recognized her immediately, their faces lighting up with pride. She spoke with the residents, listening to their stories and offering advice to those who dreamed of starting their own ventures. "There's no shame in starting from the bottom," she told them. "What matters is how you use your struggles to fuel your future." Among the residents was a young woman named Naomi, who reminded Kara of herself. Naomi had a dream of opening a bakery but didn't know where to begin. Kara took her under her wing, helping her draft a business plan and connect with resources. 6 months later, Naomi opened her bakery, and Kara was there to cut the ribbon. Kara's impact wasn't limited to individuals. She partnered with non-profit organizations and local government programs to offer free workshops on financial literacy, business planning, and marketing strategies. Her firm even launched a scholarship fund for aspiring entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. The media took notice of her efforts, and Kara found herself featured in magazines, news articles, and even a televised documentary. Reporters often asked her how she stayed grounded amidst her success. Her answer was always the same: I never forget where I came from. That's what drives me to keep going. But Kara's journey wasn't without challenges. Some critics questioned her focus on minority-owned businesses, accusing her of being exclusive. Others doubted her ability to sustain her firm's growth while giving back so much. Kara faced these challenges head-on. She continued to share her story openly, using it as proof that her work was necessary. Equality doesn't mean everyone starts at the same place, she said during one interview. It means we help those who've been left behind catch up. Her authenticity silenced her critics and earned her even more respect in the community. One evening, Kara stood on stage at a prestigious business gala, accepting an award for her contributions to the entrepreneurial world. As she looked out at the crowd, she thought about all the people who had doubted her, and all the people who had believed in her. This award isn't just for me, she said, her voice steady. It's for every person who's been told they're not good enough, not smart enough, not capable enough. I'm here to tell you, you are. The room erupted in applause, but Kara's eyes were on Naomi and other men she had invited to the event. They were the real reason she had fought so hard. Kara's story became a symbol of hope and perseverance, proving that with courage and determination, anyone could overcome their circumstances. But for Kara, the journey wasn't over. She knew there were still more lives to change, more barriers to break, and more dreams to nurture. Kara's story reminds us that resilience and determination can lead to incredible transformations. If her journey inspired you, don't forget to like this story, share it with your friends, and comment below with your thoughts. And for more stories about overcoming adversity and making a difference, subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue to share these powerful tales.